start saying that, you can place exactly what year or what generation I'm from. Yeah. True or not true? Yeah. You say, he's from the 90s. He's saying son. He's probably from New York. Mm-hmm. You can place it based on the language. There's certain, is the same thing in manuscript. There's certain languages they use in manuscript that it wasn't used in a certain era. So you immediately know this dates here, this dates here, this is after this is after this, because of the language being used and names that are quoted that did not exist. If I was writing a book and I wrote when Princess Diana died, blah, 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 whatever date you put on it cannot be in 1980. Because Princess Diana had not died in 1980. So that's how you date materials. Okay? All right. I think, unless your question is very short. It's good. All right. Now, we've been talking about the fire, and I'm going to give you something, a brief account. Now, every fire comes from a culture of prayer. Every fire comes from a culture of what? Prayer. Comes from a culture of what? Prayer. Comes from a culture of what? Prayer. Without prayer, there is no fire. Without prayer, there's no fire. Without prayer, there's no fire. When man sinned, man was cut off from God. And you remember when Cain and Abel, when Cain sinned and killed Abel, that Adam knew his wife again, and the Bible says, and man began to call upon the name of the Lord again. And that was important because without somebody crying and calling the name of the Lord, salvation cannot come. Without prayer, there is no fire. Now, I started last week, talking to you about a guy by the name of John Huss, right? Yeah. That before John Huss died, he said 100 years from now, God will raise a person that will start a fire that nobody can quench. And Martin Luther came up. After Luther's revolution, the gospel began to spread all across Europe. And it sparked a conflict. Because every time revival comes, do you know it starts a fight? Do you know revival starts a fight? Do you know why revival starts a fight? You want revival? There's going to be a conflict. You know what conflict is going to start? Huh? The conflict is, if nobody goes to the nightclubs and the bars again, you think they ain't going to be mad at the church? Huh? You think they're not going to be mad at the church? Huh? You know how many boys on campus would be mad if all the girls came to church? If one church got all the girls, and all the girls say, you know what, we're virgins now. We're not, we're not sleeping with any guy. We're saving ourselves for the Lord. And if you dare come close to us, we gonna pepper spray your. And all the girls say, you know what, none for y'all until you put a ring on it. Hello? They're going to be mad at them Beyonce, man. You know why they weren't mad at Beyonce? Because they know she was joking. They knew when she said, if you want it, you can have it, put a ring on. They knew it was a joke. Now, if you knew what she was wearing in the video, you knew that was a joke. She was not serious at all. But if all the girls decided for real, we're not going to sleep with any guy, we're keeping ourselves pure, all the cat boys going to come up to this CCC junction and demand for the pastor and demand for the pastor to be. So revival will always spark a conflict. Because when revival starts, always people who had control lose control. The people who had control over the men and the women in the church lose control. The devil lose control over the people. So guess what? The systems of this world become mad. So guess who became mad when the revival broke forth? The Catholic Church. They got mad. And conflicts broke up all throughout Europe. Some of the worst fights were Protestants and Catholic fights. Now, I would love to say that it was Catholics doing all the beating and Protestants were just taking it. But that's not true. The Catholics started it, but the Protestants finished it. They say, you might have started it, but we're going to finish it. So in towns where there were more Protestants, they killed Catholics. In towns where there were more Catholics, they killed Protestants. And it went on for a long time until John Huss had a group of people that he was discipling. And they were from Prague, which is Czech Republic today. And many of them were in a Catholic zone, and they started arresting them and killing them, and they went underground. So whilst they began to flee for religious freedom, they would meet a man by the name of, we call him Count Zinzendorf. And I want to talk to you just a little bit about that, and we're going to pray. Count Zinzendorf was, we call him in history the rich young ruler who said yes. Because he was from Germany, and he was probably, if his family was probably, if not the richest family in Germany, one of the richest families in Germany. And he went to school in Luther's town called Wittenberg. This is about 200 years after Luther. This is in the 1700s. And whilst he is there, he's taken to an art shop where an artist had just done a sculpture of, no, it was a painting, not a sculpture, a painting of Christ wearing the thorns on his head. And on the base of that, it said, I did this for you. What have you done for me? And at a young age of about 13, he was so smitten by this saying that he said, I have loved him, I've loved Jesus my whole life, but I've not done anything for him. And I dedicate my life from now onwards to do all that I can for him when he asks me. So from a very early age, Zinzendorf was very dedicated and devoted to God. When he finished school, he found a woman who was also Protestant. Now, Zinzendorf was into what we call pietism. Pietism. The pietists were the first group of, actually the first people to go to America. The Europeans that went to America first, most of them were pietists. If you took the first ship that landed on the Mayflower, about 367 of them out of 500 and I think 4 were pietists. Their leader was a pietist. The pietists were people who believed that you could have a personal relationship with God if you kept a strict structure of prayer and discipline. You could have a personal relationship with God. And so Zinzendorf was a pietist. And once he got married, he had a very strong prayer life. But one day, Zinzendorf was there, and I'm going to cut his story short because his story, for me, one of the most amazing Christians in history, but least known and least talked about. I think, for me, Count Zinzendorf, apart from Luther, Zinzendorf might be even much more impactful than Wesley and many other people that other people put up. Now, a man by the name of Christian David, who was running away from the persecution in Prague, from John Huss people, who we call the Moravians. When he left, he came and met Zinzendorf and told him that there were a group of Christians who were being persecuted, that were looking for somewhere to live, and if Zinzendorf could help them. Now, Zinzendorf, mind you, his family was very rich. He had a huge estate, and told him that he could bring the people down to Germany and he would give them a piece of land to live on for free. So they brought them. The first group was 6 people, and 8 adults and 4 children. And they came to live on Zinzendorf's land. And he gave them land, and they started building. And they called the place Herrenhut. In fact, I'm planning to go there next year. They call the place Herrenhut, which means the watchers, the ones who watch. And very soon, another group also came down there. And when they came, they met Count Zinzendorf. And they were so taken aback at his prayer life that they decided, we want to stay in this Moravian town. So they stayed. And from there, a lot of people started coming there. People from all walks of life. People who used to be Catholic, people who were Lutheran, people who were from different sects came to live there. Now, far quickly, they began to have a problem. They began to fight among themselves. Because, you see, the devil doesn't want us to be at peace with each other. One of the things that I frown upon the most is division. I can't stand that. I can't stand, this one said this, and this one said this, and this. Yeah, I don't know that too. I'll call all of you and say, this one, he says this one says this one says this one says this. What do we do? Because one of the things the devil will try to do is cause dissension among you. And you must fight that. You must fight that. That's your sister. That's your sister. Did you know that? Yes. That's your sister. Now the devil will do everything to make sure that we're not. I hate people who try to cause dissension among people. I hate them with a passion. I don't like them. They don't like me. And I like that. So before you knew it, they started to fight. And it got so bad that Zinzendorf decided that he needs to pastor them, else they would destroy the whole vision. Because Zinzendorf believed that God was building a community of faith that would be an example and a light to the world. So you know what he did. He was in the government of his town. He studied to be a lawyer. He sold off his estate, sold everything, and moved his family to the part of Herrenhut where they were building the small town and lived in a small house. So he began to go from house to house, preaching to them and telling them about how God expects men and brethren to live together. And very soon, all of them, their minds started changing. So they came together, the whole town. By this time, there were about 270 people in the town. And they came together and formed a pact, a brotherhood pact, that they will live for two things only: for the glory of God and for the betterment of each other. And they wrote a pact and signed it. All 270 people in the little town, little village, signed this and decided to live a peaceful life. In fact, according to their journals, they called that was the sweetest summer ever. Because that summer, they lived in so much harmony, and everything immediately started to change. On August the 13th, after they had signed it, they were meeting together to have communion together. And whilst they were having communion, the fire falls. The fire falls. The fire will always fall where there is unity among brothers. If we want the fire, we have to have a unity among us. Not each man for himself, God for us all. Hello? The fire fell so much that Zinzendorf said, whether we were in heaven or on earth, I knew it not. There was so much fire in the place, and there was such a spark that they began to come together. Zinzendorf calls it their first true Pentecostal experience. There were many young children that came to the saving knowledge of God. So while Zinzendorf began to read more about John Huss, he recognized that their movement was even earlier than Luther's movement. So one day he was reading Leviticus 6:13. Could somebody read Leviticus 6:13? You know what's there. Leviticus 6:13 is a famous.
Leviticus chapter 6, verses 13. For the fire shall not be kept. For the fire shall be kept burning.
6:13. Someone has given me 3:13. Okay, read.
Fire shall be kept burning on the altar continually. It shall not go out.
He said the fire shall continue burning consistently. It shall not go out. When Zinzendorf read this, he believed that God impressed on his heart to start a 24-hour chain prayer meeting. So they started a 24-hour chain. This is where IHOP and all those guys get their inspiration from. He began a 24-hour prayer meeting. Now, how did they do it? They decided 3 people would keep the first hour. Then once they left, another 3 would come and keep the second hour. When they left, the other 3 would come and keep the second hour. And they did this, and they always had 24-hour prayer. And guess how long it started? It lasted. That's what is called the 100 Years Prayer Movement. 100 years. You could go read about it. In fact, they still meet in Heron Hut, and I'm planning to go next year. 100 Years Prayer. "24 hours. Wouldn't you like to live in a town where 24 hours, every day, there was prayer going on. 24 hours every day. People would come and they would pray. People would come and they would pray for 24 hours. Now, guess what they were praying about? They would have thousands of prayer requests. But their main prayer was centered on God send missionaries to the ends of the earth. Send missionaries to the ends of the earth. Now, the question is, why didn't they go? Because at that time, there was a man by the name of John Calvin who had written that about special election, that there are people that God has specially elected to be saved. So since God has specially elected them to be saved, there's no need to go out and preach. If God wants to save them, He will save them Himself. You see how a wrong theology can stop the move of God and what God wants to do. 5 years after they began to pray, the Lord began to set their heart ablaze to release and send the first missionaries. Now, in those days, the mission field to go to was where? Guess what? In the 1700s, the mission field to go to was where? 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 Nope. It was America. Because it was the New World. That's where everybody was going. And so they decided to send the first 2 missionaries to the New World, to America. Now, when those 2 were going, you know what they did? They did their funeral. And they said bye-bye to their mothers and